My name is Saurav Sharma, and I'm a certified instructor here at ASM Educational Center, Rockville, Maryland. We have a lot of certifications and trainings for you to take, and we offer a lot of training in different areas like networking, AWS, CCNA, security, that sort of stuff. Today, what we'll do is we'll work with AWS Lambda, and the exact thing we'll be doing is scheduling AWS Lambda to stop all our AWS EC2 instances. So to get started, we will go to our EC2 console. Actually, let's go to our Lambda console. Alright, so we need two different things here. One is CloudWatch Events to schedule the event, to trigger the event on Lambda. If you've worked with Lambda, then you know that there needs to be a trigger for the Lambda function to work. So whenever we create a function, we need a trigger for it to work. Let's author a new Lambda function from scratch, and I'm going to call this stop EC2 instances. Now on the role part, we need to give this a role that can work with Amazon EC2. Now if you don't know role already, then role is permissions that's given to an Amazon resources so that it can perform some actions on EC2 resources. So for my Lambda function to be able to stop or start EC2 instances, I need to have a role that gives it the function permission to those actions. So I can either give my my Lambda function role just for that task, or I can say I want to give this a lot more permission and give it an admin role. So let's go and create a custom role. And actually, let's do this. Let's go to IAM, and on the roles, I'm going to create a new role and click on create a role, and down here let's choose Lambda so that we're giving the role to Lambda function. Next, and create a policy. Actually, you should see a bunch of policies for you to choose from. I'm going to select admin access, but you could also, for our task, select EC2. So we need Amazon EC2 full access here. So why don't we select Amazon EC2 full access so that we don't have more permissions than we need. So what this does is this will let our Lambda function perform some actions on Amazon EC2, and this is what we want. So let's select this and click on next. Role name, I'm going to say Lambda EC2 full access. So if you have a name that's self-describing, then it'll be easier when we go and choose the roles in the Lambda console. Role description, I'm going to say Lambda, same thing, EC2 full access. Now create a role. Now we have a role that we can use with our Lambda function. Now if I go to author from scratch again, so this is the Lambda console, create a function, author from scratch, and the function name stop EC2. Now I'm going to choose an existing role because we just created a role. and my role is going to be Lambda EC2 full access. I'll create a function. Okay, so we will use Python 2.7, and the code will change whenever you change the runtime. You know, if I want to work with Node, then it will give me a Node function to start with, but I'm going to work with Python 2.7. All right, so we have like a minimum code to get started with. Now what we need to do is we need to write our logic that will handle all that, everything we want the Lambda to perform. So we want to stop our EC2 instances every night at 12 a.m. So every morning 12 a.m. whichever you want to call it. So 12 a.m. at night/morning, you want to stop your EC2 instances that are running. Now you could do this for 5 p.m. So let's say you want to stop your instances whenever everyone leaves the office or leaves your school, but we're going to select 12 a.m. in the morning. So we need to use the Python SDK to talk with Amazon EC2. So I'm going to import Boto3, and I'm going to say, so Boto3 is the Python SDK for Amazon AWS. So this is what I'm doing with this is I'm saying I want to work with Python to work with Amazon resources, AWS resources. So I'm going to say EC2 equals Boto3 dot client EC2. So I'm saying EC2, whenever I say EC2, I'm referring to the EC2 resource. Okay, once we have the EC2 resource defined by EC2, what we need to do is to write our actual code to stop the instances. And you can find a lot of things you can do with Boto3, the Python SDK. Just go to Boto3 documentation. If you type Boto3 in Google, you'll get to the documentation of Boto3, and if you click on this, we should be able to find all the things we can do. So I'm interested in EC2, so I'll select EC2, Amazon EC2 examples. Actually, I'm gonna go back and now this is read the docs. I want to go to the actual Amazon website, which is aws.amazon.com SDK for Python. This is the official get started guide. Now if I go to, so this sent me to the same place, no problem. So using Boto3, I'm interested in EC2. So working with managing AWS EC2 instances, and I want to describe instances first. All right, so I did this part already. I imported Boto3, and I did this in place of client. I have EC2 right here. Okay, so we did this. Now I have EC2 in place of client, no problem, but we're interested in the available methods over here. Now the first thing I need to do to stop my EC2 instances is to find out what instances I have running, right? So if I go to my services and EC2 section, let's see what instances I have running. I have 0 instances, so it wouldn't make sense to stop the instance that are already stopped. So I'm just gonna quickly start these instances. So start. And Amazon has a method called describe instances. EC2 has a method called describe instances with which you can get the information of the instances that you currently have running or stopped. So let's navigate down to describe instances. So right here, describe instances. I'm going to click on this, and an example syntax would be something like this, right? So if I say response equals client.describe instances, and I can put in filters, I can put in instance IDs, that kind of stuff, but I can also leave this blank, and it will the response will have everything. So I'm going to quickly demonstrate that on the Lambda function. So if I say, just like in the documentation, response equals client.describe instances. In my case, it's going to be response equals EC2, because I have EC2 over here. Why don't we make this client so that it's easy and we don't get confused. Okay, so response equals client dot describe instances, right? So enter, and every so with this, response is everything. It describes everything about the instances I have currently. So if I go back to the documentation, each instance has so what I want to do is to loop through every single instance that I have. Now if I were to give this if I were to say right here instance IDs equals, and give this a list, instance IDs only takes list, and let's say one of my instance ID, and if I were to paste this, then I would only get response for this particular instance. And if I just don't say anything, then I'll get a response for every single instance. Alright, so for now we don't want to specify an instance ID, because what we want to achieve is that no matter what instance ID is, no matter even if I stop these instances and I start a new instances, more instances, 12, 15, 20 instances tomorrow, then I want to loop through every single instance that will have a different instance ID, and I want to stop them one by one. That's what I want to do. So for that, I need to get every response. So I'm going to go down, and I'm going to say for reservation in response reservations. Okay, so I chose the word reservation because response has a field called reservations. So if we go back to the documentation, let's search for reservation. Okay, so each response has reservations, so we want to go into reservations and we want to find out our stuff. So I'm saying for each reservation in the response, I want to do something, and that's going to be for another loop. Oops. All right, so for instance in reservation, I'm going to say instances. All right, so what I did here is 2 for loops. One is saying I want to loop through the reservations, and on each reservations, right? On each reservations, I want to loop through the instance. So I'm getting to the place where I want to be, the instance, right? Because I need the instance ID. I'm trying to find the instance ID that I currently have on my region. So with this, what I want to do is let me print something out so that this is not required, but I will show you quickly. So instance ID plus. So this is just word, this is I'm trying to this will help me troubleshoot, but this is a line. I could comment this out. I could say something like this, but let's not use this. Maybe if we have problems, we can use this line later on. But what this would do is to get now instance, from every instance we loop, we want to get the instance ID. So I'm going to copy this part, and I'm going to say ID equals this. ID equals instance ID of the instance we're currently looping through. So with this, we have an ID. Now what we can do is finally we can use that ID to stop that instance, right? Because if I don't do this part, then how will I know which instances to stop? I'm not gonna type in every time. I'm not gonna do this manually. This is supposed to be automatic, scheduled automatically. So this will help us get the instance ID of each instance that is currently running, or stopped, or stopped. So so ID, we got the ID. Now what we can do now finally is, if we go back to the documentation, I want to search for stop. Now I know it's stop instances, but one of the methods that EC2 has is stop instances, and stop is different from terminate. We don't want to terminate the instances because we want to come back to work tomorrow at 9 and use those instances in our case, right? So we want to stop them for 9 hours or 10 hours or 6 hours, whatever we want. So we'll work on just stopping the instance. We won't start the instance. Maybe we can do that in a different video, but for now we want to stop the instances. And the syntax for stopping an instance is like this. So the response equals client dot, so I don't need this part, so I just need client dot stop instances. So EC2 resource stop instances. Now I can say instance IDs. I can provide instance IDs, right? So now the thing to note, very important, is this has to be a list. It cannot be string. So that you see this the square brackets. So we need to make sure we will be passing a list. So for that, what I'm going to do is the ID, I'm going to make this a list. Now this is just one way of doing this. There's plenty of ways. We can collect a list of IDs and stop them one by one, but this is just one of the ways. So I'm just gonna say there's only going to be one instance on the list every time, and I'm gonna make a single instance in a list, because the instance IDs parameter will only take list. So like this, right? So what I'm doing is I'm saying client.stop instances instance IDs. So every time the loop happens, the looping happens, so it will find the ID of the instance, it will stop that instance, it will go back, find ID of another instance and stop that instance. So at the end of the Lambda function, when the Lambda function will have taken place, every instances that we have will be stopped. All right, so this is good. Now, do I want to return anything to anyone? I really don't need to, but I'm just gonna say return completed, right? So and if I were to print this, right? So if I were to print this instead of comment, then I can find this on my CloudWatch logs. So we can choose either if we want to stop this or not, print this or not. So I'm going to print this, and let's finally save this. Okay, so I'm saving this. Now I want to copy the ARN for this Lambda function, copy, and let's go to services, and in a different tab I'll open CloudWatch. Now this is the thing I was talking about in the beginning of the video, where I said to schedule a Lambda function, we need to use CloudWatch Events. On the left you can find events, so I'm going to click on event and I'm going to create a rule. Now we can schedule events by event pattern. We're not interested in that. We want to schedule something every so and so minutes or so and so days. Now rate would be good if we want to repeat a certain task every day, every minute, but for our requirement we have to use cron, because we want to be specific when we want to stop our instances. So cron in Amazon Web Services has its own rules. Now Linux has a different rule for cron, but basically if we go to cron AWS and click on the first link, then you can find that there's 6 different fields we have to enter values for. The first is minutes, hours, days, month, day of the week, and year. So over here, when we see this is one field. The asterisk here is another field. So if I say 1 in the first field, if I say 1 1 1 1 1 1, then actually this can't be. So this is the final is the year, right? The year of, I can't say 1, it has to be 1972 2199. So we have to follow instructions of the cron expression that AWS lets us use. And for I'm gonna just quickly get to the thing that we actually want. So I want to stop the instance every 12 a.m. in the night, right? So 0 is the minute, 12 a.m. 0 minutes. So the time, now this is important. The cron expression uses UTC time zone. All fields are required and time zone is UTC only. So UTC, I am here in the East Coast United States, and UTC is when it's 3 p.m. over here in US, UTC is 8 p.m., right? So it's 5 hours plus 5, UTC plus 5. So what I need to do is I need to say, if I were to say 12 a.m., UTC would be 5. Now, and the hour can be 0 to 23. So in my case, it'll be 5. So 0 minutes of 5 hours, right? Now, of day of the month. Which day I want to do this? I want to do this every day. So I'll just say a star. And the fourth is month. Which month do I need to do this? Every month, right? So the fifth is day of the week. Now on this, we could say star, but if you look at the rules, here, so one of the day of the month or day of the week values must be a question mark. So if I one of them either has to be a question mark. So in my case, so one of the day of the month or day of the week must be question mark. So in my case, I'm going to choose the day of the week as question mark, and the month and the year is going to be every year. And if I check, then I can see that my next trigger is 5 a.m. on November 14th. So every day at 5 a.m. GMT, this is going to trigger. So I get to verify if my events is working or not, is going to work or not. So in this way, I can schedule my event. Now we need to link this to our Lambda function, and to do that, I will just say I'm going to paste the ARN, right? I think this is the one we want. Stop EC2. Okay, so configure. Now, rule, I'm going to say stop EC2. Description, stop EC2. State enabled, create a rule. All right, so now I have that enabled, but then I cannot test this until tomorrow night. And that's how you schedule Lambda functions. You can have any logic in here. Instead of stopping your EC2 instances, you can delete files in your S3 bucket, or you can start instances. So that was that. Now we need to perform an important step, and that is testing our Lambda function, right? We need to test our function before we will deploy it and expect it to work in real production. So there's a cool feature here, save and test. Now I can configure a test event. Let me configure a new test event. I already have a test event, but if you were to press on here, then you would be prompted to configure a new test event, something like this. And I'm just going to leave this as it is. I'm going to say test in the name and save it, and click on save and test. And if you were typing everything that I typed so far, then you would see failed. Right now, this is important because here you can troubleshoot your function before you deploy it in production, and you wait for something to work, and after the event is supposed to work, you realize that it didn't work, and now you have messed up. So this is where you test your function before you deploy it. Now in details, what I can do is I can check what was the mistake. So it says right here in the traceback, line 19, it says unknown parameter in input, instance ID must be one of instance IDs, right? So I know my mistake. I put instance ID instead of instance IDs. Okay, so let me save, and now it's working, right? So now one thing you should notice if you're following and doing everything I'm doing is that if you go to your EC2 instances, then your instances will be stopped, because we just, even though this is a test event, you know, we are simulating an actual trigger. So I'm just, when I say test, it doesn't care if it's a test event or not, the function will be executed. So so the instances will be stopped. So I'm going to quickly start all those instances, and now we'll simulate the actual event, right, like in the production. For that, we need to go to our CloudWatch Events once again and go to rules, and this is the one we just created earlier, stop EC2. Now you know, I played around with this a little bit when I paused the video, but if you go in actions and edit, then you know we had something like 5 and 0 here, which said every 5 a.m. GMT, which is 12 a.m. in East Coast United States. So right now the time is 3:55, which is 8:55 p.m. GMT. So if I were to try you know simulating a real production trigger, then I would say instead of 5 I would say 20 for 8 o'clock and 57 for minutes, and so 2057 is our trigger. Now I'm going to say configure, update. Okay, so the rule was updated. Right now it's 3:56, and if I go to my EC2 instances, they are all running. All 3 are running. Now in a minute we will have an actual trigger that will stop these instances if we did everything right. And in the meantime, I want to go back to our role. So services IAM. Now if you remember earlier in the video, I gave our role only permissions to work with Amazon EC2. What I want to do is to give the role also access to CloudWatch, so that it will log everything, every event on CloudWatch, so that we can troubleshoot. So mine was Lambda EC2 full access. Right, so right now I only have EC2 full access. I'm going to attach a policy. Now if you're just testing things out, then you can just give it an admin access. You'll give access to every resources, but in production you don't want that, because you don't want more permissions for your resources than they actually need. So we should, as a best practice, we need to give them only permissions that they need. And I'm going to select CloudWatch. CloudWatch. So CloudWatch Events full access. This is the one I want, right? CloudWatch full access. Everything with CloudWatch, I want to give this Lambda function permissions to attach. Now I have the Lambda function we wrote has a CloudWatch access policy too. All right, so the time is 58, and by now we should have our EC2 instances triggered to stop. Let's see if it worked. And there we go. So they are just stopping, right? So stopping. So what we learned is that we can schedule Lambda functions through CloudWatch Events, right? CloudWatch, this is the CloudWatch console, and events. And we can use cron expression and we have to follow certain syntax that Amazon Web Services wants us to use, and we can schedule them to whenever we want. It could be every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes with rate, or with cron expressions we can say something like, every 12 a.m. in the morning we want this to stop. So you can try out a lot more things with this. This will be like a base for you to work on. I'll be pasting the Lambda function code under the video. So I hope you learned something from this video, and I hope to see you in other videos. Thanks for watching.